Good evening, dear friends. Today we'll have a talk about human rights as an issue in international politics. Now we know that human rights are those entitlements, okay, without which no man can lead a humane life, okay. So they are the rights which are given as entitlements to individuals by virtue of they being human, okay. And you know that these are rights without which a human being cannot lead a humane life, and therefore these rights cannot be diversed from his human self, okay. And that's the reason why um, these rights are considered to be universal, okay. They're considered to be universal primarily because of the fact that irrespective of background, irrespective of cultural differences, or irrespective of nationality or religion, every person by virtue of being human is entitled to these conditions which we call as human rights, okay. Now we know that the idea of human rights has originated from the theory of natural rights, which was popularized by a good number of political scientists like Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, etc., okay. Human rights are considered to be the modern or the secular version of the natural rights that were proposed. But natural rights were proposed at one point of time to legitimize authority, okay, or to provide a legitimate basis to state. But presently, the concept of human rights are considered to be having a moral or an ethical dimension, in sense that they are considered to be an intrinsic part of individual, which are conditions for an individual to realize his best self, okay. So these are a more secular version of natural rights, primarily because of this. Natural rights was a concept that was developed to legitimize an order, okay, or authority. And the present concept of human rights, on the other hand, is primarily a realization of their intrinsic value to individuals, okay. Now we know that though human rights have been a very important uh, element of international relations today, there has been no unanimity about their definition or their nature, or the mode of their recognition or enforcement. There is no unanimity, and that's the reason why the concept of human rights had been subjected to varied interpretations, which sometimes has allowed countries to interpret human rights to suit their national interests. There are three generations of human rights. The first generation of human rights are considered to be civil and political rights, and these first generation rights coincide with the liberal discourse in political science and international relations, okay. The second generation of human rights are social, economic, and cultural rights, and these coincide with the socialist perspective, okay. And the more recent generation of human rights, or the more recent stream of human rights, are what are called as solidarity rights, and these are associated with post-colonial societies which recognize the rights of collectivities or rights of groups, okay. So these are the three different types of human rights. Now we know that the concept of human rights uh, has made a fundamental contribution to international relations, because it had again led to the rediscovery of individual in international relations. Now previously, international relations was all about the study of state and power structures and transnational actors, and the concept of power and so forth. But the concept of human rights had put again the focus of international relations on individual. Therefore, the concept of human rights had rediscovered individual in international relations. Now that's considered to be one of the greatest contribution of the concept of human rights to international relations. Now you know that human rights began to have an international dimension from the 19th century itself. However, in 1960s, 70s, 80s, the the idea of humanitarianism was the basis for human rights. The idea that by realizing humanity in every individual, and by recognizing the worth of humanity in every individual, we can, you know, uh, further the interests of humanity as a whole. So, through realizing humanity of an individual, the goals of humanity can be realized. This is the concept of humanitarianism. It makes individual center. It makes individual humanity as the focal point through which the collective goals of humanity can be realized, okay. So this was the focus of the concept of human rights initially, and you know that based on this concept of humanitarianism, a good number of countries have entered into agreements, like for example the Brussels Convention, okay, was an agreement that was entered into for reducing slave trade and for reducing slavery, primarily because this is a violation of individual dignity. Okay, and also, the Hague Convention was primarily aimed at regulation of conduct of war to realize humanity and to realize human values. Okay, also the Geneva Convention, which has led nation states to accept certain standards to treat prisoners of war. Okay, treatment of refugees, etc. All these were primarily focused on the concept of humanitarianism. Okay, so humanitarianism became the basis for relations and for negotiations between the nation states to realize individual dignity and individual's intrinsic worth, which was assumed to be to for the service of the entire humanity as a whole. Okay, and so this was prior to the First World War. After the Second World War, in the post-war period, the concept of human rights assumed a completely different dimension. Okay, now human rights became a very important feature of international relations in the post-war period, and primarily the experiences in the interwar period in the form of atrocities committed against minorities, atrocities committed against ethnic groups like Jews, atrocities committed against hippies, Slavs, in the dictatorial regimes of Germany and Italy. Okay, so these instances have led the nation states to recast their ideas about human rights. It was realized that violation of human rights by dictatorial regimes would endanger international peace and security. Okay, so disregard to human rights would lead to threat to global peace. Okay, now this was realized, right? Also during the Nuremberg trials, in the post-war period, which was bringing to justice the perpetrators of crimes against Jews in Nazi Germany. Okay, during these trials also there was a recognition that there should be some set of rights which should be held sacrosanct, which should be placed under the protection of entire humanity, and which should not be left vulnerable to the whims and fancies of the regimes. So it was this recognition that a good number of countries have begun to realize some crimes as crimes against humanity. Okay, putting the responsibility of the entire community of nations for protection of these basic entitlements. Okay, now please remember that acts like the governmental actions like the final solution that was propagated by Adolf Hitler as a solution for elimination of Jews from Germany, or persecution against communists in Italy. All these were considered to be crimes against humanity, because they were violative of human dignity, and therefore they were violative of basic human rights. And it is now recognized that these actions should be redeemed. These actions should be remedied through an international consensus, through a mechanism which will be able to transcend national borders. This was the idea that had taken roots during the Nuremberg trials. That the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by United Nations General Assembly in 1948, along with the two international conventions on civil and economic rights, on civil and political rights, and international convention on social, economic, and cultural rights. Both these international conventions, along with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, have put human rights on the foreign policy agenda, have put human rights as the forefront of national policies and nations' interactions with other countries. These have provided a code for internal government of states. Okay, so all the states are now given the responsibility to make laws and to create institutional mechanisms for protection of human rights. Okay, and also it was from this time onwards slowly the concept of human rights began to challenge states' exclusive jurisdiction over its citizens. Okay, and the norms of non-interference, the norms of state sovereignty, etc., are now slowly beginning to be challenged because of the concept of human rights. Okay, and you know that slowly human rights began to become very important element of international relations, began because it began to cast obligations on governments. It began to affect domestic policies as well as foreign policies of nation states. And human rights also became an important dimension for interaction between the nation states, on building trade relations, okay, on providing foreign aid, okay, and so forth. Also, human rights have begun to impose serious constraints on the behavior of nation states, on how they deal with dissension, or how they deal with secessionist movements or demands for new rights, or how the nation states conduct themselves in war. All these began to be impacted by the concept of human rights. So human rights began to impose constraints. And you also know that in the post-Cold War period, okay, increasingly it has come to be acknowledged that for a secure international order, we require to protect human rights, and any violation of human rights by any regime should be addressed by the global community. And this led to the birth of new doctrines like humanitarian intervention and so forth. Now there are three important approaches in the international relations which tend to give a perspective on human rights. The first is called as the realist view. Okay, now realists consider human rights as a soft issue in international relations compared to other harder issues like security or power and so forth. Human rights is considered to be a soft issue, and according to the realists, the ethical or the moral dimensions associated with human rights makes them soft issue, primarily because of the fact that ethical or moral considerations cannot be employed to interpret the state action. Okay, it's only national interests, and all rhetoric of human rights, according to realists, is only for promotion of national interests by the states. Okay, and the second important viewpoint is put forth by the liberals. Liberals consider that human rights doctrine is an outcome of liberal ideology. Okay, it's an extension of the liberal principles, which are realized and recognized at the domestic levels. The extension of these principles is in the concept of human rights according to liberals. And liberals propose the view that the state should be bound legally to uphold human rights. Okay. However, the liberal perspective on human rights tends to give more and more importance only to the civil and political rights, and not to other generation of rights. The critical view, of course, holds that human rights is a capitalist construct, and therefore the concept of human rights is only a disguise to further capitalist interests. And that's the reason why the critical thinkers tend to be slightly hostile to the ideas of human rights. Okay. Now the post-colonial states, they have come out with their own understanding of human rights. Now the post-colonial states view human rights as a type of cultural imperialism. Okay, and it reflects Eurocentric conception of human rights. Okay, and they believe that their value systems, or what are called as Asian values, tend to be more oriented towards respect for authority, respect for collectivity, and a balance between rights and duties and so forth. Therefore, they consider that the concept of human rights is not applicable to their societies. Okay. Now you know that in recent times, that's after the post-Cold War, in the post-Cold War era, humanitarian intervention had come to be a very important trend in international relations. Humanitarian intervention is military intervention carried out in another country without any strategic objectives, but with a clearly identified humanitarian objectives. Like preventing harm, or reducing human suffering, or eliminating persecution of citizens by the state, and so forth. Several political scientists like Francis de Vittorio and international theoreticians like Hugo Grotius, etc., supported humanitarian intervention. In the decade of 1990s is usually described as the golden era of humanitarian intervention. End of Cold War, emergence of America as a hyperpower, globalization with complex interdependence between countries, which began to indicate that events occurring in one part of the world are going to have ramifications or consequences for countries in other parts of the world. And the new international world order, okay, with a very, very strong public opinion favoring humanitarian intervention to overcome corrupt and dictatorial regimes, or flagrant violation of human rights and so forth. And also support by leaders like Kofi Annan, who considers that conception of human rights and their protection lends ethical dimension to international relations. And Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of England, all these people have supported a humanitarian intervention in a very big way. The war on terror in the 21st century had lent a new dimension through humanitarian intervention. All these factors have clearly outlined the preference of nation states to transcend national borders for protection of human rights in the name of humanitarian intervention. That's the reason why in 1990s, Iraq, Somalia, Haiti, Rwanda, Kosovo, all these operations, were undertaken as a part of humanitarian intervention to protect human rights, or on the grounds of protecting human rights. Also, Afghanistan in 2004, Libya in 2011. Okay. Now, what is the impact of humanitarian intervention on international relations? Now, we know that there are a lot of debates revolving whether humanitarian intervention is acceptable, or whether it is going to end state-centric international relations, and so forth. There are a good number of debates related to humanitarian intervention. So, let us get started with trying to understand what kind of impact it has on international relations. To start with, the traditional notions of state sovereignty are slowly being challenged now. The principle of non-interference, the principle of secured boundaries, internally pacified areas, which have been the fundamentals of the traditional notion of state sovereignty, are now slowly being challenged because of the concept of humanitarian intervention. Secondly, it also has begun to lead to a tension between the state's right to protect, okay, and the interests of justice transcending borders. Okay, now it was traditionally believed that it is the duty and the right of state to protect the rights of individuals. Now it is considered that considerations of justice and protection of human rights can have mandate transcending national borders. Also, the major states have assumed the right of intervention in internal affairs of other countries, disregarding the principle of non-interference. So these are very broadly the consequences of humanitarian intervention in international relations. And there are two important schools of thought. The first school of thought supports humanitarian intervention on the grounds that it is in consonance with the logic of globalization, because globalization creates interdependence and the indivisible nature of humanity. Okay, and humanitarian intervention promotes rule-bound global order, so that any errant regime can be brought back and order can be established in the global system. Okay, and thirdly, the concept of humanitarian intervention spreads shared values, promotes democracy. Okay, however, there is an equal amount of objection to the concept of humanitarian intervention. Okay, primarily because of the fact that there is no basis for humanitarian intervention in international law. Okay, therefore it's only a set of accepted or loosely agreed principles by nation states, which still are not completely established in terms of their form or content. And secondly, it is also alleged that the major powers are indulging in what are called as double standards. For example, the major powers were readily available to intervene in Iraq because their national interests were involved very much in the Middle Eastern region. However, the same kind of enthusiasm was absent when there was a humanitarian crisis that was unfolding at Rwanda, Chechnya, Tibet, etc. Okay, and realists, on the other hand, also criticize humanitarian intervention, saying that this is disguised national interest. The high moral ground assumed by humanitarian intervention is nothing but cultural imperialism and disguised national interest, according to realists. So these are several criticisms leveled against humanitarian intervention. Thank you so much.